the Zoom indication is that we're live, but I'm waiting for like the official, this is probably an anxiety issue. I should probably talk to a clinician about this, that I don't trust Zoom. When Zoom says I'm live, if I don't see it on my other screen where Facebook is, I don't trust it. So I've got to wait to verify it there. And I did. It's officially, it's up. So welcome everybody to another wonderful Monday of Parents Helping Parents Live. So it is the 21st of February. February is almost already gone. I just found out that the Winter Olympics is over. I virtually saw none of it, which is really disappointing, but maybe I can catch some old stuff on YouTube. So welcome. If you've never joined us before, we're really happy to have you. I'm going to just kind of tell you a little bit about Parents Helping Parents for a couple minutes, then I'll introduce our speakers, and we'll get rocking and rolling. Parents Helping Parents is a Oklahoma-based nonprofit organization with the goal of sharing experiences, education, and resources to parents who have a child any age, 12 to 102, who might be struggling with a substance use disorder. So our goal's really simple. It was we were founded by a group of parents who had a child that was struggling with addiction. They couldn't find a lot of answers to their questions. Once they found the answers, they thought, hey, there should be a organization out there just to support parents. So they created it. And now X number of years later, here we are. So our primary function across the state of Oklahoma is hosting support groups for parents. We've got multiple locations where we do that: Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Norman, Edmond, I think even in Wichita, Kansas, and expanding into some other places. So at those local chapters, parents actually get together, offer support groups, bring in speakers, and do all kinds of outreach. So this live stream that we do is our way to carry the message to a little bit bigger audience, hopefully to some rural communities who don't have access to some other traditional support groups, and also just a way to bring in speakers from across the country who might not be Oklahoma locals like we have tonight, to offer some of their experience and expertise for us. So if you want more information about Parents Helping Parents, if you want more information about our chapters or different upcoming events, you can do that in two places. You can do that on our Facebook page at Parents Helping Parents Inc., or you can go to our website, parentshelpingparents.info, and find more information there. We want to be really clear that as an organization, Parents Helping Parents has no professional expertise or experience. We are simply people who have walked in the shoes of a loved one, and our mission is limited to sharing resources, our own experience, and education. Now, we do get the opportunity to bring experts into some of our meetings like we have tonight, but that's not an official function of Parents Helping Parents. We think that professional counseling, medical help, legal help, all those things are wonderful, and we want to connect you to those resources. We just don't do that work ourselves. I think that's all I've got. Hey, I'm really excited tonight. We've got a gentleman on with us named Jay Staples that I've had the pleasure of knowing for a handful of years, maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe 6. I don't know. Time tends to fly. I think a lot of Jay. I've always thought a lot of the work that he does in the field of recovery. And we also have Jay's new partner, Justin, on, who's going to be joining us. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys to talk to us for a little bit, and I'll be monitoring questions along the way. If you've got questions, you can ask that a couple of different ways. You can ask them absolutely in the comment section of the Facebook feed as we're going live. But remember, that's the internet, and what goes on the internet stays on the internet. So you're more than welcome to use that chat feed to ask questions. But if you're concerned at all about your privacy or your anonymity, we have a private text line. I'm the only person that ever reads that, and then I delete them at the end of the show. That text number is in the title of the video, so feel free to text that if you're watching live. If you're not watching live, don't text it, because sometimes like 3 weeks after an event, I get a question. I'm like, you're too late. You've missed out. That's a live text line. Everything else can get shot to us over Facebook. So gentlemen, if you're okay with it, while you guys are talking, I will share your websites, your Facebook feeds in the comment section so that people can click on those and explore those at their leisure. So if you have problems with that, let me know as soon as you pop in. So other than that, guys, it is all you.
Thanks,
well,
Derek.
thank you.
Jay, why don't you take the lead?
Well, how nice of you, Justin. Well, welcome. I'm excited to be here. I'm right here in Dallas, Texas, just probably south of Oklahoma. Some of you are tuning in. My name is Jay Staples, said numerous times, but I'm the owner, humble servant of Sober Caddy Creative Agency. Big name, but really what it really is boils down to is finding creative solutions for families, companies, and facilities. And so I work directly with some facilities on a contract basis. I'm not paid by any facility. It's more just to help with train leadership and train members within their organization, not to send people. I always have to say that, unfortunately, with this industry. But I also work directly with families, with this gentleman that's with me, Justin Diehl, and we also work directly with companies creating their mental health programs. So I partnered with several companies all over the country, just creating awareness. A lot of people, what I found out, they had this program in place, but no one was using it. So some of it is just shattering the stigma that goes along with reaching out for help, thinking that their job will be in jeopardy, which is the complete opposite. But what I'm also really excited about with working directly with families, we've merged forces with Justin, Recovery in Action. Always have thought highly of Justin. And he is, it's yin and yang with us. Like, I'm the creative, off the charts, can't stay on the topic. Justin Diehl is licensed clinician, interventionist, all that. I mean, so he works directly with our families. I'll let you talk about Recovery in Action, but Sober Caddy, Recovery in Action kind of merged forces. So some people a little confused by that. So we are one and the same, and we're excited about that. So when I say we work with families, it is mainly all Justin. And so Justin, why don't you run down Recovery in Action real quick?
Will do. Well, so as Jay mentioned, my name is Justin Diehl. I'm the founder of Recovery in Action. And next month, Recovery in Action will have been open for 10 years. So I'm very proud and sometimes still sort of just baffled by that. But I've been a licensed alcohol and drug counselor in the state of Minnesota since 2007. And I've worked in the field for 18 years. I cut my teeth managing men's sober houses. I was responsible for, 28 beds. I've been the alumni liaison for internationally known treatment center. And then I did the addiction studies program at Hazelden and went to work for a private company for about 5 years before I started Recovery in Action. And I think, this field picked me. Last August, I was able to celebrate 20 years of sobriety, and I started my journey because of an intervention. I had this disease lie to me for 15 years of solid research, and it took family and loved ones gathering in my parents' living room and having a conversation with me to give me the nudge. And I'm very proud that since going to treatment, I have not relapsed. And so I'm a perfect example that somebody can be walking like a duck and talking like a duck and think they're an eagle. And if they just have the right approach to get them to take a look at it, can live a really happy life as a duck.
That's going to be you're probably going to hear the duck 2-3 more times. Like, Justin loves talking about the ducks and the eagles. But anyway, so Recovery in Action, we do case management. We do all clinical intervention, clinical case management, clinical transports. We do assessments with allowing us with the clinicians on board. And like I said, they kind of keep me sane. And we're going to talk about being what it looks like to be healthy recovery program, or we always say I've been in long-term recovery since 2008 from drugs and alcohol. I too did not go to treatment once and find whatever it is. I had to do more what they call market research. But so as a I worked in several treatment centers, and I'm also a client of several treatment centers. So I got sober in 2008, and we both use our experience, strength, and hope. And so, Justin, why don't you kind of run down, kind of the clinical component. You got probably a really big book with DSM-5. I'm going to put you on a time limit because we're not wanting to put people to sleep, but we talk about being in long-term recovery. We talk about what is it like to be in a healthy recovery program, substance abuse, mental health, but in order to get into recovery from substance abuse, mental health, why don't you kind of run down the characteristics real quickly?
All right, and for those of you out there, I had to twist Jay's arm to let me do some clinical talking. He's afraid that it's going to be boring. But for some of you out there, you may think that your loved one is pretty sure that your loved one is a duck. But these are the 11 different criteria in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, Edition 5. A problematic pattern of alcohol use leading to clinically significant impairment or distress as manifested by at least 2 of the following occurring within a 12-month period. 1, alcohol is often taken in larger amounts or over a longer period than was intended. 2, there is a persistent desire or unsuccessful efforts to cut down or control alcohol use. 3, a great deal of time is spent in activities necessary to obtain alcohol, use alcohol, or recover from its effects. 4, craving or a strong desire or urge to use. 5, recurrent alcohol use resulting in a failure to fulfill major role obligations at work, school, or home. 6, continued alcohol use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems caused or exacerbated by the effects of alcohol. 7, important social, occupational, or recreational activities are given up or reduced because of alcohol use. 8, recurrent alcohol use in situations in which it is physically hazardous. 9, alcohol use is continued despite knowledge of having a persistent or recurrent physical or physiological problem that is likely to have been caused or exacerbated by alcohol. And these last 2 are the physiological tolerance as defined by either of the following: a need for markedly increased amounts of alcohol to achieve intoxication or desired effect, or B, a markedly diminished effect with continued use at the same amount of alcohol. And withdrawal. Withdrawal can look like a lot of things also. It's clammy hands, shaking, sweats, hand tremors. So that depends a lot on how much somebody has been using and how long they've been using. And a lot of people are not aware that alcohol withdrawal can be life-threatening. There's a lot of other drug categories out there. Heroin withdrawal, somebody may wish they were dead, but it will not actually kill them. But the one that is legal in alcohol could actually be life-threatening.
Good job. So you know what? You ever get confused as to who's the clinician and who's the person in long-term recovery, just see how we're dressed. You can kind of tell the well-dressed clinician, Justin, is breaking it down. And so, it's, I kid and talk about, clinical terms and so forth like that. I went, saw everyone, read everything. I will say I talked with parents of an 18-year-old today, and I talked with the sister of a 45-year-old executive. And so different situations, both in life and so forth, but majority of the topics that I really talked, majority of the things could be recycled to both situations. And we're trying, the ultimate goal is to get them into long-term recovery and what that looks like for a healthy, when I was in active addiction, I will always tell parents, a lot of the parents, I'm sure, Justin, you get it, we get the withdrawal symptoms, we get all this, but most parents just have that gut instinct that something isn't right. And so my thing with parents and loved ones is more often than not that gut that gut instinct, gut feeling is right 99% of the time. I'm not going to say 100 because I don't think it's 100%. I've never come across that 1% yet with all the families and all the people I've dealt with. Whenever they feel something is amiss, they're always, that I pretty dead on that something is going on. And so what I really kind of want to talk about is, with you, Justin, is, with me being we're both in long-term recovery. And so, we let's break it down. More often than not, there's crisis and so forth. You talked briefly about intervention work, when it's just needing a professional to come in and intervene. There's treatment options, kind of run through real quickly, the intervention, the treatment modalities, and what it all looks like with clinical, the therapy, the treatment, and so forth. And we can then shoot off to what a healthy recovery program looks like.
Quickly go through that, huh? Well, so yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, parents know their children, spouses know their spouse, and if things are not clicking, and there are a lot of empties in the recycle, that's a good place to start. But really it is, I mean, I've seen as much where parents want to, more and more lately, want to think that it might be a mental health thing. And back to the withdrawal part, whatever drug that you are taking, a lot of them mimic, I see a hand raised. I don't think I did that, did I? But
Justin, you have a question? Go ahead, Justin.
So I guess I did raise my hand. If you're drinking alcohol is a depressant. And so parents may be concerned that it's a mental health diagnosis of depression. And then if you go into withdrawal, the opposite of depression is presenting with anxiety. And so a lot of times we have to, talk to a family at how long have they been seeing the depression or anxiety. And that goes into consideration on where we are picking as the right place for their loved one.
Well, perfect. And so I'm real big, for me, I've had several opportunities, missed opportunities, treatments, therapy, books, whatever it may be. And really what it really kind of clicked with me is, we talked about it, if you get into the symptoms and the technical allergy and the spiritual malady and the mental obsession, and how it was simply broken down to me, because I need everything laid in front of me with a silver platter, simple explanation. So if I was ever, say, allergic to strawberries, and every time I ate a strawberry, I, risked going to jail, getting a DUI, pushing family away, health issues, financial issues, going to the lawyer, going to the drunk tank, going to, court and prison, and I continually kept eating strawberries. And I'm just saying, like, I don't know how I get in this situation. I don't know, and reality is I would know that it's those strawberries that are causing it. For me, drugs and alcohol are exactly the same thing. And so when I have someone that's allergic to shellfish and they are, out and about, refuses to eat shellfish. You ask them why. I'm allergic. I break out in hives. For me, drugs and alcohol, I was never able to put two and two together. It always was a mystery to me that when I continually put drugs and alcohol into my system, I continually had these bad issues, present itself. So when finally in 2008, when I was intervened on by family, to go into long-term treatment and build upon a long-term recovery, taking drugs and alcohol were the simple thing. Like, yeah, on my own, I couldn't do it. Experience showed me that. But knowing full well, as I got into since 2008, it has nothing to do with getting drugs and alcohol out of my life. I took that out of my life, and now I'm faced with feelings. I use drugs and alcohol to numb the feelings. I'm dealing with real life, quote unquote. And so long-term recovery to me is finding spiritual tools, things we can use on a day-to-day. We have plenty of books out there. There's 12-step, there's abstinence-based, which I believe in. I know, Justin, you do too. And within that, we're breaking it down, simple instructions upon awakening when we retire at night. And it gives us strict instructions on how we can deal with resentments and fears and, guilt and loneliness. And so, putting in long-term recovery, let's talk about, we get the drugs and alcohol out of their lives. That's really what an intervention and treatment really are doing. But for, you can't stay in treatment. You can't have a clinician follow you around wherever you go. So what, for you as, a person in long-term recovery and even a clinician, when I say a healthy recovery program, what are some of the attributes and characteristics?
Oh, there's so many. I think, well, the fact is we are told when we're getting sober, you have to get sober for yourself. And that's fairly confusing on some levels. I have gotten more happiness and pride out of the fact that I have a younger sister that, can know at 12 o'clock in the morning if her car, because I'm in Minnesota, if her car goes into a snowbank, she can call me and I will answer and I will be safe to drive and, help her out of that snowbank. I have parents that can put their head on the pillow and not worry, is tonight the night that Justin's going to mouth off to the wrong guy at the bar, which happened more than on a few nights before sobriety. I have a sponsor, I have sponsees, I have a home group meeting, and I think at that home group, I've had pretty much every service commitment you can have, from making coffee to emptying this is back in the old days, the cigarette can, and all the way to, steering chair and, trusted servant of that meeting. And so I am not just a member of my recovery community, but what does, healthy recovery look like? I am blessed to, be sober. As I like to put it, I got older in St. Paul, Minnesota, and then I grew up here because we do have a pretty nice recovery community here. And I used to walk past a coffee shop that has a patio on the way to the bar that I worked at and drank at, and on a couple of nights slept at, and wonder why people were sitting on a patio that only served coffee when one more block down there was a patio that had alcohol. And what does a recovery life look like? Everybody at that coffee shop patio knows me now, but a lot of the people at that old bar have reached out about a significant other, a brother, a child. And that is what, recovery is. It is not recognizing the phone number on your phone and picking it up anyway.
Well, I mean, it gives you tools, absolutely, and so forth. And, when you get into fear inventory and get into, and just not covering up that fear. And, I just came back from an incredible weekend being Uncle Jay to 4, nephews and my niece, and being an active, brother. I'm the youngest of 3, and a mom and dad that have some health issues. And, there's no better feeling than being present and being the fun uncle and being an active member of the family, being something where you talked about whether my 2 brothers can rely on, my family can rely on, it's a whole different kind of flavor. And so, I think the most important thing that you said is, I tried to get sober for for all those family members and to be that uncle or whatever it may be. And I just couldn't until I finally realized that, taking it out of my life, nothing since getting sober I've never been, kicked out of a club. And I've never, I always thought you needed drugs and alcohol. I always thought you needed to have a scotch and a steak to close a business deal or anything like that. All delusional thinking and delusional, just the domino effect that I get into delusion is staggering and so forth. I had to start, from ground floor and start dealing with those delusional thoughts, those fears, the shame, the guilt, the loneliness, even the anger and so forth. All those feelings, the first person I had to forgive was myself. And because I held so much resentment toward myself, I held so much anger toward myself. I had a fear that what would life look like if I didn't have, my crutch, my drugs and alcohol and so forth. And so, if you're doing that for someone else, experience, I've seen it happen for far too many people, that you're not going to go deep to the root of those angers, the loneliness, the fears, the root, what's really causing it. And, sometimes you have to get out of that family dysfunction. There's sometimes, and it's not anyone's fault, that we all have our family dysfunction, that these beliefs that, we were raised at, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, the way that I perceived success and self-worth and so forth like that came from family, because that's really who I was around. They may not have believed that, but I picked it up, this delusional belief system, along the way growing up, and drugs and alcohol just kind of amplified that. And so when I was stuck with me, the authentic Jay, I always tell people that I build my recovery on 3 things: authenticity, connection, and vulnerability. And, vulnerability is never a sign of weakness. I think if you're ever, if I'm around a bunch of guys and I start getting vulnerable, I think that's weakness, and that they're going to leave and start talking stuff behind my back. I get vulnerable with you, Justin. I get vulnerable as a business partner and just a person in life. And what I've learned from being vulnerable with people who I can trust, who I can have faith in, and people that are always going to be there. You talk about your sister that's, can call you at any time, much like me. He's getting vulnerable and getting vulnerable enough that I find my authentic self. And when I can find my authentic self, and I don't have to walk into a room and play a character or who I think people want me to be, or how I think I should be, or who I should be, when I'm just authentic and I can walk into that room being authentic, that's a true connection. And so for me, those 3 things are paramount in my long-term recovery, because once I got vulnerable, these delusional thoughts that still happen, and I just put it out in public air and say, hey, Justin, I just had this thought that, we're going to go on this Parents Helping Parents, blog or podcast. And they're going to laugh at me. They're going to realize that I'm not this professional that Derek talked about. I can get in that shame and this delusional thinking. And reality is, that's all started by me. And if I don't put that up in public air and get vulnerable, this is what I'm thinking, you can just laugh at me and I'll be done with it. And I can get rid of it. I have my shirt, Rewriting Stories. I love using Rewrite Your Story, and you can rewrite those beliefs, those delusions, those fears. And so for me, authenticity, connection, and vulnerability, it starts with vulnerability, that leads to connection, that leads to authenticity, and authenticity leads to true connection. And that's really what, for me, a healthy recovery program looks like. And I can tell you, though, what works for me isn't always going to work for everyone else. And so it's, you have to find what you're passionate about. But for me, I've always started with those 3 principles and have offshot. And life, I hated some of the things you talked about, like, Jay, if you ever got sober, you'd be living a life beyond your wildest dreams. And, I'd always have these therapists say, Jay, what do you want to be in 5-10 years? And I would say something really low bottom. And they'd be like, Jay, you're selling yourself short. And I would be sitting there in active addiction saying, you're an idiot. You know, I didn't have that belief in my own system. And you know what? Lo and behold, I'm shattering everything that I would, you know, if I would have held to those goals and those objectives, I certainly would have been. But in active addiction or being around a loved one, it's so easy to start getting the blame game or use this potential word like family members. You get, you know, I know you get it, you know, every family member we talk about, he's such a great person. She is an amazing athlete or something. And so a sober caddy, you know, the name of my company started because of my love of golf, you know, becoming really invested in golf and athletes and, you know, being able to work with, you know, athletes and executives and so forth. You know, it's, you know, the potential and everything that I just wanted to punch people when they say, Jay, you have so much potential. Like, why are you doing, like, I'm not a violent person, but it's like, you know what you know what I'm talking about. It's just like, man, I can't get there. I'm stuck in neutral.
I do. And it brings up a couple of things that I wanted to touch on. You know, one of the things I tell every family, because of what you just shared there, anytime, you know, families make a couple of mistakes innocently enough, you know, one being they don't want to have the identified individual feel like they're being bombarded or ganged up on. And so they think, well, maybe this, you know, one family member or loved one should have the conversation. And I tell them, anytime you have a one-on-one conversation with an active alcoholic or addict, you're outnumbered because of what, you know, Jay was just describing. I mean, we have so many different committee members in our head that are, you know, telling us one moment that we should be, you know, the next host of Saturday Night Live, to the next minute thinking, I'm going to need a grocery cart to live underneath the bridge. That's about, you know, the spectrum that it can go. And, you know, Jade also mentioned, you know, long-term recovery a couple of times, and that can be, you know, confusing. And I heard, and this could possibly just be an old wives' tale, but the rumor is that in the 80s, when 28 days was approved by the insurance industry, who sadly still to this day calls a lot of the shots, and they said, well, you know, our military are off at treatment for 28 days, which is only because they have a day of travel to get to a treatment center. They were there for 28 days and then they needed a day to get back. Otherwise, they were at risk of being demoted a rank. And so the insurance field said, well, if it's good enough for them, that's what we will approve. And now more and more, they're not even approving, you know, 28 days. That is really, to kind of jump back to the withdrawal comment. I mean, depending on how long somebody has been using and what they've been using, they're really just coming out of the fog, maybe at the end of the second week. And so to think that they're going to get it in another 2 weeks is asking and expecting a lot. There are wonderful programs out there now that are not trying to deal with solely insurance. And so they have 45, 60, 90 day, you know, tracks. But Jay and I, you know, Sober Caddy and how he came up with that, I came up with the name Recovery in Action because that is, there's a line in our book that, you know, faith without work is dead. It's action and more action. And that is what, you know, we want to have recovery look like. And so if somebody can go to treatment for 28 days, I don't know about Jay, but I was blessed with the opportunity, and I do consider it that. I slept on a twin bed for the first 9 months of sobriety. I was at one place for 28 days, another program for 4 months, and then a sober house for another 4 months. not everybody has that kind of opportunity. And so we come in and we do the before and after. If you need help, having the conversation with your loved one, and it's almost a mediator for addiction. And we'll help you do that. And then we hand them off to a program that we have vetted, closely. And we are still going to be there to take your questions, guide you, hold you accountable. And then we can tag back in when your loved one is getting out. And it is really kind of almost like a golf coach in recovery.
Caddy.
Like a caddy.
Step for step.
Because unlike Jay's game, I'm not the greatest driver on the golf course, but I have an okay, short game, and I'm a really good putter. But I still need a caddy on the drivers. Well, some people might be doing okay at going to meetings, but they're not doing so great at getting a sponsor and working the steps. Or, they might be doing okay with sponsor and steps, but recovery, as we both described, is life. And so the first step says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our life was unmanageable. The fact is that life is still unmanageable. We were trying to manage it with alcohol. That's why we were qualified as alcoholics. But I'm qualified as a recovering alcoholic because life is still unmanageable, and I have other tools to, deal with that unmanageability now. And I think I grew up playing baseball, not golf, and I couldn't turn a double play when I was in, T-ball. But by the time I was playing in college, I was a pretty good second baseman and could turn a double play better than just about anybody. You don't get there overnight. You're not going to get to knowing how you're going to handle a breakup with a significant other, or, losing out on a job. These are things. There's the beauty of recovery is for that first year of sobriety, you're going to have all sorts of firsts. Your first sober birthday, your first sober Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, you're going to have a lot of firsts that may come in that first year as well, and some that come in after that. And now I've raised my hand again somehow. So I'll pass it back to you, Jay.
Well, I mean, for non-golfers or anything, what I always say, my yardage book for any caddy, tell you distance or whatever, if you're not a golfer, but I have a yardage book. Justin and I, have this yardage book that, has every yardage, there's no one yardage every time you play life and so forth. So our yardage book includes, all different paths and all different yards and all different ways to get into, to the green, into the hole. And so that's really what I love about what we do. If we can turn this around on us, is we're there every step of the way, and it's never one path cures all or fits all. And so when I tell families, I said it to a family just about an hour ago, like my yardage book includes all the different yardage for wherever we are in the course of life. We have that yardage book, and so that's what we're excited about. And it's what a healthy recovery program is I think we kind of set ourselves up for failure talking about this, because there's some people that out there that may be living in long-term recovery that's really working for them, and it has nothing to do with what we talked about, and that's fine, and that's the beauty of finding paths in life. But I think for me is finding strength and creativity and so forth, and happy places, which is my the golf course for me and so forth. But utilizing all those tools and utilizing all that and putting together a life that really gets you pumped up. I was talking to a friend of mine that got really upset. He said, "What's the best part of the day, Jay?" And I said, every day is the best, the same every day. And that's when I open my eyes and the sun coming up. And he's like, "Well, that's cheesy." And I said, "Well, it may be cheesy, but it's honest to God the truth, because there's so many more opportunities." And I remember regretting opening my eyes. And even some mornings where I hope I didn't open my eyes because I thought that was the best thing for my family and everyone, that I just gave up hope. And so, for me, I can be cheesy, I can be cheesy creative, I guess, but truly, every time I open my eyes, there's so much opportunities that come, and that's what recovery is taught. And using tools, clinicians, and vulnerability groups, and accountability groups, which I meant to say, but however it is, find those passions. And if you get that feeling within, we talked about family members having that gut instinct. I remember having that gut instinct that I was on the right path, and I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where the path was going to lead, but I remember internally with a group of people, sponsor and accountability people, that I had this gut feeling like, you know what, this is different. Like this time feels different. I've never lost that gut feeling. And when I do, this is the beautiful thing about recovery, is when I start feeling off that gut instinct, like, Jay, I think you're on the wrong path. I can call up a Justin. I have so many different Justins out there around me that says like something's going on. I don't know what it is. And we can talk through it. You don't have to pick up drugs and alcohol for a relapse. I know you love this, Justin, but relapse doesn't necessarily just happen when you pick up a bottle or a needle or whatever it may be. For me, sometimes relapses, and I hate using the word relapse, but because it's such a dangerous people for loved one. When loved ones hear relapse, oh my God. Well, my relapses, thankfully, have nothing to do with picking up a bottle or a drug. It's, delusional thinking, which I talked earlier about. I still can buy into that delusion. I can still buy into fear. I can still, this self-imposed shame that I lay on myself. I can still buy into that. And thankfully, those tools I don't pick up. But if I continually believe in those delusions, if I start going off the chart for several days, Justin, I know you'll be the first one, if not in a long line of people that say, time out, Jay, something isn't up. And if I continually put these delusions back to back, I'm not opposed to picking up. But, one bad decision is not going to lead me to, and I think families fear that too, is one bad decision or one different, that they're going to automatically spiral it back to where we started from. And we have to walk through that. Sometimes you make bad decisions, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's all dangerous. Like bad decisions, sometimes I've learned from my bad decisions. I've learned the hard way sometimes. And thankfully, I have people around me that didn't prevent me from learning the hard way, but knew full well that I wasn't going to a bar, but they had to watch me get through this. And I dig myself back out of this hole, and I'd be like, what the heck, guys, where were you? And sometimes they wanted me to go through that, knowing I wasn't going to walk into a bar. But if I kept doing it, they were there to watch me be a caddy. But, we walk people through bad decisions and wherever it is. And we can be an advocate for the addict alcoholic. Sometimes with you guys, the family members, that we can be like, no, let's just hold off. Let's see. He or she's got to go through this himself, because we can't step in and say this is a dumb idea. We can't step in and do whatever. We let them learn, sometimes the hard way. And sometimes, that hard way just is a life lesson too. We all learn life lessons. Addicts and alcoholics aren't immune to life lessons anymore.
Well, and really, I mean, the family shouldn't say this is a bad idea, but that's what I'll do that. We have a case that, I'm working on right now, 40-ish, gentleman, and he is a month or so sober. And he is a week or so into a relationship. But I have really given the parents firm request to not express their feelings to their son about it. But I have shared on our weekly calls, how I think it's a poor idea. But I back it up with not being emotionally attached, but being able to say, here are reasons X, Y, and Z for your recovery that it's not wonderful, but he's also an adult. And so and he's being honest, right? And that's what you mentioned it. I mean, we don't want to steal somebody's successes or failures. And, you know, you also mentioned that at some point early in your recovery, your gut told you were doing the deal. And what I have seen of working in this field, for 18 years and doing, interventions for close to 15, family members struggle or suffer longer than the addict, because the addict is looking, for a solution in the bottom of a bottle or pipe or someplace. And so they're not feeling the pain that the loved ones and family are watching them do this. And then, the addict either knows after they've gone to treatment or gone into a recovery program of some sort, hey, I'm feeling better. And family members are still walking on eggshells going, are they going to do this? Is it going to last this time? And that's another, reason that we're here, is to have them have a place to vent. I often tell, especially parents, I'm taking the badge off of your chest. You are no longer the warden of the sheriff. I am. That's our role as the clinicians, because, and you set yourself up for this, you mentioned the clinical, there is the trans-theoretical model of change. It has 6 phases, and the 5th phase is relapse for everybody, but that doesn't mean that they drink or use. It's relapsing into dishonesty or, not showing up. And I think I must upset the internet because, I thought I was going to raise my own hand again. But so
we're going to hear about the spoke, aren't we? We're going to hear about the spokes in the wheel, ladies and gentlemen, right? We know each other so well. Here comes the wheel and the spokes.
The newly sober person is the center of a wagon wheel. And you are a spoke, your sponsor is a spoke, the therapist is a spoke, a sober house manager is a spoke, and I'm the outside of the wheel that keeps all of the spokes tied together and hopefully the wheel moving forward.
You're the rubber. You're the rubber, well, right?
New school. I go old school with an old wagon wheel. But, even if there is a pothole in the road, there's a therapeutic opportunity for that they can learn from that. And that's where, especially parents, because they don't want their children to feel any pain, want to rush in and come to the rescue. And that's really what the definition of enabling is. If they are there to support them through, like my parents, I mean, I lost a very, close friend when I was months sober. And they almost didn't tell me because they didn't know how I was going to handle it. They talked to my counselor before, they gave me the news. And I'm so grateful that my counselor said, Justin's doing well enough to handle this, because going to that funeral and everything and having other friends that had known me my whole life see a change in me that I hadn't even seen in myself yet, filled me up like no drug or bottle ever could. And my parents almost stole that from me. So, yeah.
Well, families, like, I always say it, like, personalizing it, my mom and dad, my family were addicted to me and so forth. And as much as I turned to drugs and alcohol, like their lives were affected by where I was in life, or if I was doing well, like my mom, through the addiction would sleep under the pillow of her bed was any phone, any communication device that she could get her hands on. Dad's phone, her phone, landline, fax machine, almost whoever. I mean, she slept with it underneath her pillow. And, it's long-term recovery. We talked about how my life changed. Like, I know for a fact my mom doesn't sleep with, phones underneath her pillow anymore. And that's a miracle and that's a benefit, but it's to no fault of anyone. But, their lives were actively affected. And, you know, what I tell families, and most don't probably just roll their eyes. I can't tell over the phone, but, you know, when I say you're addicted to loving Johnny or Jane or whatever it may be, because your lives are being affected, whether they're doing well or they're doing bad or whatever it may be. So, you know, we're all in the same, you know, like their lives are affected, and we in active addiction think that we're just affecting our lives, like, and that couldn't be furthest from the truth. And that's where the advantage of an interventionist and intervention and case management, all the caddies, you know, we can walk step for step and help the addict alcoholic realize that there's a tornado around them, that they're creating so much damage, but the family is also sometimes a tornado themselves and creating damage and unhealthy things for the addict and alcoholic. And that allows us to help. So thankfully, Derek's here to save us.
Man, Ed, I know how passionate you guys are about what you do, because if I didn't come in and maybe try to write, like, you guys could talk about the things that you love doing. You could talk about recovery. You could talk about sobriety for like 8 hours. And
let's try it.
Skip a beat.
Let's try it.
Skip a beat, man.
Sobriety-a-thon. Let's do it.
I love it. And I love, I mean, I even made notes, you know, in my journal of several things that you guys said that I think are just wonderful takeaways. As we're kind of bringing everything back together, I always ask the people that are on the same question to kind of close us up, and I'll let you guys decide who's going to go first and who's going to go last. But the question is, if you had just 60 seconds to give a message to somebody that might be struggling with substance use, or to give a message to a family that might be struggling with a loved one, what would that 60-second message be?
Man, I mean, it's, you know, we do recover, period. I just over and over again, and then going back to rewriting story. Like for me, I always thought the story was written out for me. For whatever reason, that I was just this character that it was, you know, plot twist is going to end up badly. And so I'm just spiraling. The story's already written. Somehow, some way, I'm going to kill myself, or I'm going to die. I just hope I don't take someone else with me, because I was so just hopeless and helpless. And so what I can tell people is, like, every single day is a new chapter, and we are the author of our story. If you're letting someone else write your story, you're doing it wrong. Write your own story. You are the author of your story, and live out your story which way you want to do it. That was 60 seconds too, and I stayed within the boundaries. I'm good.
That's perfect, man. Justin?
I don't know if I'm as good. You know, first of all, to, you know, the families out there, I always tell them, say something, right? My biggest fear is that a family will think, you know, this is a phase, or, you know, it'll make things worse. And my biggest fear is they won't say something, and then, you know, worst case scenario will happen. And when they put their head on the pillow for the rest of their lives, they're going to beat themselves up for not saying something. As far as what to say, tell that person, I love you and you are lovable, but I hate your behavior. I hate the use, and I'm not okay with that. I want to be part of coming up with a solution, and your life can be better.
Excellent, man. You guys could be doing like 1,000 different things on a Monday night. I really appreciate you taking time, like, out of your schedules to do this, to talk to our families, to talk to people that might be listening. Thank you guys for being here tonight, just for everything you do out in the recovery world, man. Thank
you, Derek, for all you do, and for all those families out there. You guys are doing the heavy lifting. We're just out here, you know, living the blessings and the miracles of recovery. I could do this anytime, but you know, you guys are doing the heavy lifting. The families, and you, Derek, hurting the cats. I see you and I respect you. So that's all. You guys are doing the heavy lifting.
Great. Appreciate it, man. You guys are ever in the city, in Oklahoma City, give me a shout. I'll take you out for pizza.
Let's do it. I can be up there tomorrow. I
I'll
love
set you up a tea time somewhere. I'll drive the
I
car.
love to eat.
All
Thank you,
right.
Derek. Thank you for
Hey,
all.
thank you guys.
Thanks
Appreciate
everyone.
it.
Bye bye.